Everything okay with the stop? That's the question Lewis Hamilton asked his own race engineer, moments after pitting during a virtual safety car. The answer came back immediately. All okay on our side, all okay. It wasn't. And by the time Ferrari told him the truth, the damage was already done. Keep that phrase in your head, all okay, because it comes back twice in this story, and neither time does it mean what it should. Here's the context that makes this worth examining closely. This was Hamilton's third pit stop of the Hungarian Grand Prix, triggered by a virtual safety car after Oscar Piastri's retirement. He was fighting Kimi Antonelli for what could have been a genuine podium position, maybe even second place, on the exit of that pit lane. The stakes in that specific moment were real, and Hamilton knew it. So when he came out of the pits, the first thing he did was check with his own team, whether the stop had gone clean. If you want the stories the paddock doesn't put in the press releases, subscribe right now. And tell me in the comments which country you're watching from, because how you rate a moment like this probably depends on how much trust you'd extend to your own team in that exact situation. Ferrari's engineer, Carlo Santi, told him directly, all okay. Hamilton, still not entirely convinced, asked again a few laps later. Only then did Ferrari inform him of what had actually happened. He'd been clocked at 80.1 kilometers per hour in a pit lane with an 80 kilometer per hour limit. 1/10 of 1 kilometer per hour over. A 5-second penalty applied after the fact that would ultimately drop him from 4th to 5th, 7/10 of a second, behind his own teammate Charles Leclerc. Was this a case of Ferrari genuinely not knowing about the infringement when Hamilton first asked? Did the team have the telemetry in front of them and simply choose not to tell him yet? Or was this a communication gap between race control and the pit wall that nobody at Ferrari controlled directly? The unbroadcast radio doesn't answer that. What it does show, clearly, is a driver asking a direct question and getting reassurance that turned out to be false. Here's where the credential stacking actually matters, because this isn't the first time this exact team, with this exact driver, has had a communication problem end in a penalty this month. And the way Ferrari's own boss responded to that earlier one is what makes the silence on this one worth noticing. 3 weeks before any of this happened, no correction. Just 1 day before this specific race in Saturday's qualifying session, Ferrari made an almost identical kind of mistake. Hamilton was on a provisional front row lap when Oscar Piastri began his own push lap behind him, unseen. Ferrari's radio warning about Piastri's approach came through, but far too late for Hamilton to react. The stewards ruled Hamilton had impeded Piastri and handed down a 3-place grid penalty. This time, though, Ferrari didn't wait to be asked twice. Team principal Fred Vasseur went in front of Sky Sports F1 cameras before the penalty was even confirmed and said without hedging, "We told him Piastri was coming, but far too late. If there is a mistake, it's our mistake." Read that again, because it matters for what comes next. That is a team boss standing up, unprompted, taking full ownership of a communication failure, in public, within hours of it happening. So here's the caso espejo that actually tells you something, because one miscommunication on its own is just a mistake. 2 from the same team with the same driver, in the same weekend, with 2 completely different responses from leadership. That's a pattern worth laying side by side. Saturday, Ferrari's radio comes through late, and Vasseur immediately publicly owns it as the team's failure. Sunday, Ferrari's radio actively reassures Hamilton that everything is fine when it wasn't, and from Ferrari's leadership, there has been total silence. Neither miscommunication on its own is indefensible. Radio delays happen. Telemetry data takes time to process. Put them next to each other, though, and ask the obvious question. Why does the same team principal who was so quick to take a microphone and own one mistake say absolutely nothing about the second one? The one where his own engineer told the driver directly that everything was fine when it wasn't? Was Hamilton lied to, or was Ferrari simply behind on their own data? Did anyone at Ferrari actually know about the infringement when Hamilton first asked? Or was all okay a genuine, if incorrect, answer given in good faith? Nothing in the material answers that with certainty, and that's exactly the gap that makes this worth asking out loud rather than assuming. And if you're not subscribed yet, this is exactly the kind of story you'll want to be here for. Because when a team's willingness to admit fault changes from one day to the next, that shift usually isn't random. Let's talk about what that all okay actually cost, because 5 seconds sounds small, and it wasn't. Hamilton crossed the line 4th on the road. Take that 5-second penalty away, And the gap to Leclerc at the flag isn't 7/10 behind. It flips the other way entirely, in Hamilton's favor. That penalty didn't just cost him a tenth of pace somewhere on track, it cost him a position to his own teammate in a race where he'd already lost his front row start the day before to a different Ferrari communication error. This has not been an isolated month for Hamilton. Go back 3 race weekends and the pattern gets longer, not shorter. Silverstone, a false start, 5-second penalty. Spa, a first-lap collision with George Russell, another 5-second penalty. Hungary alone, the grid drop for impeding Piastri, and now this pit lane penalty. 4 penalties in 3 weekends, and in that entire run, exactly 1 public admission of fault from the team running his car, for the mistake that, relatively speaking, cost him the least. What was Hamilton actually supposed to do in that moment? Trust his own team's reassurance and move on, or push back and demand they double-check the data before telling him everything was fine? He chose to trust them, twice. And the second time he asked anyway, out of instinct, is the only reason he found out the truth before the broadcast did. The honest steelman deserves stating plainly here, because it's a fair point. Telemetry processing takes time. Race control communicates infringements to teams on its own schedule, not instantly, and Ferrari's engineer may genuinely have believed the stop was clean when he said so. That's not necessarily a lie. It could simply be an honest answer that hadn't caught up with the facts yet. That's a defensible position. It is also not the position that explains the total silence from Ferrari's leadership afterward. If this really was just an innocent delay in information, a team as quick as Vasseur was on Saturday to own a communication failure would have no reason to stay quiet about a second one on Sunday, unless the second one felt harder to frame as simply an honest mistake. Do I know for certain whether Ferrari's engineer knew the truth and delayed telling Hamilton, or whether the team was simply behind on its own data? No, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. It's not proven either way. But it's exactly the question anyone who watched Vasseur so readily own Saturday's mistake is entitled to ask about Sunday's silence. Zoom out from this one weekend, because this isn't really just about one driver and one team. Modern Formula One pit walls run on a constant stream of telemetry, and the gap between what a team knows and what it tells its driver, in real time, under pressure, is exactly where trust either gets built or quietly eroded. When a team is fast to admit fault on one error and silent on another, the pattern that forms isn't about honesty in general, it's about which mistakes get owned publicly, and which ones get left for the driver to ask about twice. So tell me, is this simply how telemetry delays work under pressure, or is Ferrari being selective about which mistakes it's willing to stand behind in public? Drop your verdict below, and hit like if you already know which one it is. Ferrari heads into the summer break with plenty to review before Zandvoort and Monza, pit lane calibration, communication protocols, and apparently which mistakes get a microphone and which ones get silenced. Whether the next miscommunication with Hamilton gets the same treatment as Saturday's or the same treatment as Sunday's will tell us a great deal about how this team actually operates when the cameras aren't already rolling. This story is not over, and when the next radio call gets tested, you'll want to be here for it. Until the next one.